What's
Good
up?
morning. How are you doing?
Doing great.
Good, good.
Happy
We've got,
Tuesday.
what's that?
Happy Tuesday.
I know, right? We've got Money Moves. Today's February 15th, the day after, what was the holiday yesterday? Happy Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day.
Yes, it was Valentine's Day. So we all know what typically happens around that October, November timeframe after Valentine's Day, right? It's baby making time. So we're talking about not making babies when it's not that kind of show. But we're talking about, okay, so you've got a new baby on the way, or maybe you've got your first baby or whatever. So there's some big money moves that you need to make in order to make that a good situation, right? So reach out to your friends, reach out to your family, say, hey, I know you're having a baby or whatever the case may be, or you just had a baby, and they're talking about that on Money Moves, and share the link, and we'll get started in just a minute. And we're back. We're live. We're talking about money moves with new babies in the house. So, or additional babies in the house. So I know you've had a few babies, right?
I've had a couple.
Yeah, I've had a couple, right? I've got 3. I didn't have them, but, I was part of the process. But, whenever you have a new addition, one of the things you got to consider is, okay, how does this impact? Obviously, beyond the obvious of no sleep and, you're changing diapers every 10 minutes and the learning curve of being a parent, but there's also a lot of financial stuff too, right, Wendy?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I hear a lot of people say like about the financial planning of having a baby, but I think most people are just thinking about paying for diapers and formula, right? And like got to buy a crib and got to buy toys. But there's a lot more to prepare for financially or, to be ready for with having a new little one. Yeah. And yes, they get more expensive as they get older.
Well, and I want to caution people before we go down this road. First of all, there's no perfect time, or perfect plan for having a baby or having a child or whatever the case may be. So don't think that, okay, we got to wait. I'm going to tell you right now, that was literally the best thing I've ever done in my life. And it was well worth it. There were challenges both financially and stuff like that, but the payout was just 10x, right? Yeah. But you're right. They don't get cheaper as they get older, so kind of plan accordingly. But we're going to talk about some of that stuff too. And then we'll actually talk about one of the bonuses. But so, obviously I was kind of joking about Valentine's Day being yesterday. And then, a lot of hot date nights happening and things like that. So big uptick in new babies in the October, November timeframe as a result. So with that said, what are some of the things that, you look at when it comes to the top 5 money moves you should make as a new parent or as you're having a new one, a new baby. But, the first thing you want to do is what? What would you say, Wendy?
I might have this out of order from what
just throw one out there.
I think about health insurance, right?
Yeah.
So health insurance, because even in the process of like pregnancy and all of that, the health insurance is something that always is it covering the pregnancy? And then you have the baby, you got to get the baby on the health insurance. And I think you have a limited time to do that. So
yeah. And that's one of those things. And you do have a limited time, but you have some time. Yeah. But it's one of those things that you definitely don't want to space it because there's a lot going on. Right. And I remember, when my first was born, I was in there and I didn't actually know you could get PTSD from a childbirth. But that's what I felt. And there was like no sleep. And I, back then I was used to, if I didn't get like 8-9 hours of sleep, I was a wreck. Right. And that doesn't happen now. It's like, if I get 4, I'm good. But it's one of those things that there's a lot going on. And it's so critical that you add, that new little one to your health plan or whatever, reach out to your HR department. And that's stuff that you can kind of prep going into it. I mean, most people know when their due date is, or they're inducing or whatever the case may be. So you kind of can plan ahead for that stuff, but that's definitely something you want to have on your radar. Is that step 1 is updating your health insurance with your new little bundle of joy. Right. Absolutely. And then I'm sorry.
I just said, absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. So, what are some other things? What's another thing you can think of?
So tax information.
Yep.
Right.
Why
another
is
tax
so
deduction? Woo woo.
Not only a deduction, but those are little tax credits.
Yeah. Right? Well, that's what I actually.
Yeah.
Credit.
So
yeah.
That's huge because it's a lot more. It's a lot more bang for your buck, and I'm just going to throw this out here. If your due date's like early January for some reason, if you can get it into the prior year taxes, and I'm not saying, but I am saying, so it's a nice little pick me up, right, for your tax dollars. So just kind of
crazy. Like, I mean, so I had 7 in my house at one point in time, right? 3 of them that are now technically adults. But yeah, those child tax credits are huge. A huge benefit.
Yes.
But yeah, gotta update the tax info for sure.
Yeah. So
and get
7
the social security cards and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I think I want to say that stuff's automatic now, but you definitely want to get that social security number right out of the gate, like as soon as possible. And usually your nursing staff, I mean, they do this all the time, right? Mm-hmm. So they're kind of helping you out with all that and can kind of get you set up with X, Y, or Z. But definitely want to have that tax info updated as soon as possible, because that is going to be a big financial boon for you, right? Because you now get that tax credit and things like that. And I see, people with DOBs or dates of birth, 1/1, 1/2, things like that. And again, if you can kind of, massage the numbers, so to speak, or whatever, but make that happen. But and then you start really looking at getting into the kind of the financial piece, right? Okay, so new baby, we're obviously, hopefully you've got a circle of friends and family around you helping you out and things like that. A lot going on. We've got the new baby on the health insurance. We got the social security number so we can take advantage of the tax benefits and things like that. Even though we're not filing until April, we got him or her in before December 31st at midnight. So the other piece of that is now looking at the financial aspect. And that's really kind of where we're going to dig in today a little bit. But I want to make sure I mention the others. But number one is get a life insurance policy for your new baby, right?
Which most people have never heard of doing that before.
Yeah, I mean, and some people get a little weirded out about it, right? Oh, I don't want, I'm like jinxing it or whatever, or I don't know. Some people are superstitious and things like that, but it's one of those things that, and I swear that the Gerber rep was hanging outside of our birthing room waiting with the paper in hand for us to sign. But you'll get notifications and stuff like that, but don't necessarily jump at the first thing you get. I mean, one of the things that you can do with insurance is, you can do a 529 alternative and things like that with regards to college funding. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff you can do. So again, sit down with a wealth and tax coach, right? Or financial coach, whatever you want to call it. Watch some of our videos because we've talked about some of this stuff in the past and really understand what can you do. And if you have questions, let us know. Reach out to Wendy at Wendy Lee Online or me at Black Swan Money, and we'll kind of give you some pointers. But you really want to make sure you at least have that $10,000 policy or whatever, because things happen. I mean, I hate to say that, but things do happen, and you don't want to have a big financial hit right after you just had a big emotional hit too. So it's important. It's important. Any other additional comments on that? I feel like I kind of darkened the mood a little bit, but
well, I think that there's advantages to taking out a life insurance policy on your child beyond like the fear that something would happen.
Yeah.
Right. But one thing I didn't know when my kids were younger is taking out life insurance on them that, has certain things in place so they remain insurable. Because another thing, like, it might not be some tragedy in the sense of, losing a child, but, illness, things that could happen. I mean, diabetes, right? Yeah. There's kids that, I used to work in an elementary school and I would see, kids get diagnosed in 2nd and 3rd grade as a diabetic, right? At that point, they're more difficult to insure.
Yeah. If they can even get it at that point.
If they can get it, right. So putting that in place, and I don't know, more about this than I do, but like if there's ways to have like it convert without them having to go through medical again and things like that. That's something I guess, reach out and talk one-on-one. But there's more protection than just if you lose a child.
Yeah, and that's the key point. You know, again, to kind of keep it more on the positive side, there's a lot of different stuff that you can do. I mean, we've got a program called $1 Million Baby. Some of you may have heard of it. We should probably do a video on that, which is a 529 alternative plan that has, you know, way more tax benefits and things like that, which we can go into on another video. But there are a lot of things that you can do, and it also, you look at. I set up, policies for my kids when they were born, and then set up additional stuff when they were a little older, but still in elementary school, because of what you were talking about. I mean, things happen. You know, my daughter, for example, we've got breast cancer genetically on both sides of the family tree, right? So unfortunately, odds are that, she may run into something as well. And then at that point, she wouldn't be able to protect her family down the road. And if you do that in advance, you don't have to worry about it, right? And it gives her that peace of mind as she goes into her adulthood. So it's one of those things that you can set your children up for success if you talk to the financial coach. But definitely, worst case, have a small something just set aside just to protect, your financial wealth and things like that. But again, talk to a financial coach or a wealth and tax coach and show, what can I do to set my newborn up for success? And I'm talking not just college, but beyond that, beyond that, there's a lot you can do with a little bit of money. It's amazing.
And that's the key too, is when they're super little, these policies are way inexpensive.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. I mean, and that's one of the things, you hear the gurus talking about, insurance is expensive. No, it's not, especially at that age. I mean, it's, look at the numbers. Don't get me wrong. Because, I've seen a lot of people who can design this policy correctly. But unfortunately, a lot of those are designed incorrectly and not really financially efficient is what you're looking for there. So it's, again, definitely do your homework on that. But yeah, definitely want to get something set up for the kids. So what's another thing that you want to do?
So the next one, it's so funny because literally everyone we talk to and we ask about this, I feel like they all give the same objection. So we'll dig into that a little bit, but updating or creating a will. So if something happens to you, I mean, the big thing, right? If something happens to you, who's going to take care of your baby?
Yeah. And nobody really wants to have that conversation. No. I mean, it's because it's usually, I love my in-laws, but or something like that. I mean, I'm just, again, being transparent because we struggle with that conversation too. And so, or somebody's good at one thing, but not necessarily the other. And so, what do you do and things like that and have that conversation. But the last thing you want to do, and keep in mind, I talk to a lot of families on the financial planning side. And I know, Wendy, you do as well, talking on your different channels and things like that. But literally, it seems as though 10%, 1 out of 10 families has a will in place. Everybody's meaning to get to it.
Right. Everyone has good intentions.
Everybody has good intentions. And we've been talking about it or whatever. But I'm going to tell you right now, that is one of the most important things you can do because it's a set of instructions. And it's not that, we don't really do a whole lot or whatever. And it's not you. It's not you going out and, with your spouse or whatever. And I'm talking to you, the viewer, but going out with your spouse or whatever and getting crazy and drunk driving. That's not what we're talking about. It's you going out and then somebody else, some other idiot going out there and then impacting you in your life. And all of a sudden it can devastate things, in a big, big way. And it's not just the money side. It's, who's going to care for the kids and things like that. Have that conversation. So there's not some squabble after the fact, or worst case, you live in a different state. And so, I'm in Tennessee. So the state of Tennessee comes in and puts my children in, child services custody while they figure it out. I mean, that's probably nothing more traumatic for kids, and I'm talking if both spouses are together and we're impacted. But, not only that, it's leaving that set of instructions and that financial, okay, we want this money going to Susie Q or whoever, my mom or my aunt or whoever's going to take care of the children to help support them. But what we did, just to kind of be a little transparent, is, we had the kids going to one side because of that home and that nurturing and stuff like that was really kind of what we emulated. But we had the financial piece of it going to the other side for the benefit of the kids, because that side was much better with the money and kind of business oriented and stuff like that. So we had it going in both directions. So, we got the lovey-dovey huggy side, and then we also have the financial side over here. So it was a little unique.
Yeah.
But I think that was a good, comfortable.
No, I think that's a good point too, that it doesn't have to be all the same people.
Yeah.
Right. Like, yeah. I bet a lot of people don't think about that you can separate who handles the money for them from the person that actually cares for them. And, we've heard it several times on calls together, right? Where I just don't know who to pick, right? There's nobody that's like perfect, right? Or these are my political beliefs and this is the family's political beliefs or whatever. But, you always make the point on these calls, which I think is so true, is that we'll make a decision even if it's not the best one, because it's going to be better than the state taking your kid.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You don't want the state to make the decision. Right. And because all kinds of crazy things can happen, that crazy cousin you have could end up with your kids for whatever reason. Right. I mean, and you don't want that. So pick one, but you can divvy it up. And that's where, again, going back to the will, you can kind of lay all that out. Okay. Well, the parents are in different locations, the grandparents in different locations. I don't want the kids to lose connection with my side of the family or whatever. You can put all that in a will, that they're going to spend 2 weeks of summer with, the family. But, again, make sure you have all these conversations and make sure you have, and we're going to talk about this in a second too, but make sure you leave some money to help offset that cost. The last thing you want to do, again, kids aren't cheap and they don't get cheaper as they get older, right? You don't want to leave that financial burden on your parents or your sibling or whoever's going to take care of the kids for you. But you definitely want to have a will in place. And it's not like you've got to go out and spend a few $1,000s with an attorney to do a will. I mean, if you can do that, fantastic. If not, go to LegalZoom.com and design a will with them. It's gonna, I think it's gonna be like $40-$50 or something like that. I mean, I'm not an attorney. I'm not trying to give legal advice here, but do something. Don't hope it all works out. Hope is you hoping somebody else takes action for you. Take some action, put a little planning in place. Talk to an attorney and get a will set up, not only a last will and testament, but a living will as well. Right. And for those of you that don't know the difference, a living will is if something should happen to you, you don't want to put that burden on your spouse or your children to, do we pull the plug or not? But it's one of those that last will and testament, especially when it comes to the kids and stuff like that, you definitely want to get it updated. If you've got a new baby or, if your first baby or a new addition or something like that, you want to update it every time just to make sure everything is spelled out. And you can get creative with it. Don't be intimidated by it. And I know it's a tough conversation to have, but it's a conversation that you need to have, right?
Yep. Love it. Awesome. So one more.
Yep. The last one kind of goes to, kind of piggybacks on that, the one we just talked about having a will in place. Okay, I'm going to leave my kids with Nana and Papa or whoever, Bump and Gigi or whatever you call them, right? But it's one of those things that you don't want to put that financial burden on them. You want to also leave your financial house or get your financial house in order. And I'm not just talking insurance, because there's a whole range of stuff that you need, especially if this is your first baby, things change a lot. Right. You talk about the additional expenses, but now you've got a life literally depending on you. Right. So, for you first time parents out there, you got to level up. I mean, it's time to level up the game and stuff like that. And don't get intimidated by it. Most people have been having babies for literally thousands of years. And in most cases it works out. Right. But you can, again, you want to kind of plan, not, hey, we got to get all this financial stuff in order before we have the baby, but you want to be working on it, especially as that new baby's coming in. And, number one is, kind of that emergency fund set up. If you have a job loss or things like that, you still want to be able to go out and not go out and like do things, but I'm talking like go out and be able to buy food and buy diapers and stuff like that. And you'll get help from family and friends, which is, always fantastic. But, you definitely want to have that emergency fund set up. You also want to make sure your debt's kind of in line. This is the stuff we always talk about, get that debt as low as possible. And then, the other piece is having your insurance in order, right? A lot of people think that, hey, I've got, $100,000 or $150,000. And if you're not used to making a lot of money or something like that, that may seem like a lot, but I mean, with 7 kids, Wendy, I mean, how far does 100 grand go or 200 grand go? I mean,
wouldn't take care of very much. 2 kids in college for 2 years and we're done with that.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you start looking at that. And so there's a formula out there called DIME.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And, it's always, well, how much do I need? Right. Again, talk to a financial coach or wealth and tax coach and, or we can help you or whatever, but it's super simple. So DIME, like a nickel and a dime, you look at what debts. I want to make sure that I have the debts paid off for my surviving spouse and the kids or whatever. Income replacement, that's the biggie. Right. And you want to look at, let's say you're 30 years old making, 70 grand a year, right? Or 70 grand a year. And you're going to work for the next 30 years. Okay. Well, that's a lot of income. I mean, that's, 700,000 times 3, that's $2.1 million that you're worth, from a financial standpoint to your family. Not that you need $2.1 million. That's not what I'm saying. But the formula for that wealth replacement is usually 10 years. It's 75%. Okay. So, if I've got a calculator handy and I don't, 70,000 times 10, that's 700,000. So 25% or 75% of that, excuse me, you're going to be somewhere in that 600,000 range. Right. And that's just for the income replacement. Again, we've got DIME, there's 4 components. But that's a good number. Now, if you're an empty nester, you're looking at 5 years of income replacement, but that's the biggie. And again, once you start talking about that, you may want to start talking about a trust, but at least get the will in place, get the insurance in place, and that way you don't have to worry about it. And then M is the mortgage, right? Paying off the mortgage. And I ask most people, most people are out there are double income, right? Meaning both spouses are working, they're contributing, and most people live at that level, right? They spend the money that they're bringing in. So that mortgage piece, and the income piece kind of all ties together. You want to make sure, because think about this. Let's say, God forbid, something happens to, we'll use the husband as a traditional breadwinner, but that's not really tradition anymore. But let's say that the husband's making more money and something happens at work or, on the way home or whatever. And all of a sudden that person's gone. You're devastated. Kids are devastated, right? Well, now you're also financially devastated because that income replacement wasn't there and the mortgage is still there. And
the bills are the same, but the money's not coming in.
Exactly. All the bills, they keep coming, right? And so now you've got to sell the house and you'll make a little money off of it, but that typically results in you moving to a different area to be able to afford a lower cost house, which means the kids lose their support system too, at school, all their friends and stuff like that at school. So that's a big impact. So that, pay off the mortgage. It's super cheap, guys. And then E stands for final expenses and educational expenses. And I always suggest using $15,000 for final expense. That's to cover funeral costs and things like that. And then $100,000 per child as seed money for either, hey, the child wants to go to college or go to a trade school. And I'm a big fan of trade schools. Go to college or go to a trade school, or if they want to open a business, you want to bless that and make sure they've got some startup money, and that's a personal discussion in your household. But you add all those numbers up and whatever that total is, that's what your quote unquote DIME need is, your insurable need. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we talked about this a little bit, I think a week or two ago, but that, most people are underinsured. And I didn't know, I didn't have education around that DIME formula, but when you really dig in and, everyone we've talked to, they see that formula and they're like, yeah, that makes sense. Right. But it's not taught a ton. And so I always thought I just need to cover my burial and then a little bit extra, maybe pay off the house is kind of what I always thought. But, your income replacement, your kid's college, especially, so we're talking about, right, new baby.
Yep.
This kid's got 18 years, right, that they have to be taken care of if something happens to you. So setting up that protection in advance, and that like you said, there's already devastation. If something bad happens, let's not add the further devastation of financial crisis as well.
Yeah. And that'll trick it into a lot of different areas. And some people, I do want to add this on the life insurance piece. a lot of people think, oh, I've got life insurance at work.
Mm.
And, so I don't need anything else. And, number one, typically it's not enough. And number two is that's like renting your insurance, right? Because once you leave that job or whatever, that goes away, or if you start a business, that's why you want to own your own, right? So that's great that you have some at work. That's like gravy on top, right? But you want to own your own. Just like you own your own home, typically, when you're starting to stack wealth, that's typically the biggest investment people have. But, I always talk to spouses and ask the question, if you lost the other person, can you afford everything on your own? 99% of the time, the answer is no. Right. So you want to plan for it that way. And then the other thing I see a lot too is, well, my spouse doesn't work. You see stay-at-home moms, so they're not bringing in an income, so we don't need to worry about that. And that is a huge mistake too. Unless you want your mother-in-law moving in with you, right? Because they're
Exactly.
I mean, seriously, because they're taking care of the kids, cleaning the house, doing whatever, running the errands, doing X, Y, and Z. That's a busy job. And for you stay-at-home moms out there or stay-at-home dads, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? So it's one of those things that you got to account for that, because if not, you're going to have somebody step in that role,
right,
in order for you, the surviving spouse, to be able to continue that. So I don't want to get too far off track, but that getting your financial house in order takes a whole new level when you now have kids coming into the picture. Because before, I mean, let's be honest, if you're a solo, flying solo, or if, and hey, I'm going to adopt or whatever the case may be, or you don't need to be, married to have a child, but, or if you're young and single, what I call dinks, right? Double income, no kids, right? You live in that great lifestyle. And if something happens, no big deal. It's just us, right? Well, that changes when you have a little one looking up at you, or, kind of like, hey, what are we going to do here? I need, shelter and lodging and all that stuff. And, so it's important that you plan for all this stuff. So getting that financial house in order, the biggies, have an emergency fund set back at least $1,000, and then go to 3 months of your expenses, right? Number two is get those debts paid down as quickly as possible, and do a debt snowball. We can show you how to do that too. And then lastly, get that life insurance piece in place, because the child's going to go somewhere. You want to make sure you're not burdening them financially, and that you're going to leave some money aside. And that's where that will comes in. It's kind of a set of instructions or whatever the case may be. You can even take it a step further and create a trust, and trusts are relatively expensive. And if you get with a good estate planning attorney, they can walk you through on how to set it up to where your children have an endless stream of money to help support them through their lives, or, at least to adulthood, not 18 to adulthood. There's a difference. But, I kind of went on there, Wendy. I mean, what else do you want to add on that? I mean,
No, I think that's good. I think we covered it. Enough information for a new parent, right? They're like,
I know. Yeah, that's the key. That's the key. Don't let it intimidate you. It's like, oh my gosh, I just thought we were having a kid. Yeah. No, it's not intimidating, but be proactive about it. Again, don't hope it all will work out. Plan and make sure it works out. Because once you do it, it's going to give you such a big peace of mind of, okay, we've got everything covered, right?
Yeah.
And I wish they, because you see a lot of people when they get married, or I was talking to one of my best buddies, he's having that conversation with somebody, and they're talking about premarital counseling or whatever. They should have like pre-baby counseling too. Yeah. I wish they offered that. Because, again, it's just, I look at, there's no rule book right there. And I know there's a book out there that's like, what to expect when you're expecting, right? I think that's literally every mother gets that, but there's not like a book out there on, hey, you need to handle this.
Right.
And get this stuff in order when you think about it. Because once you get into it, it's like, oh, that wasn't such a big deal. But it can be kind of intimidating. And what happens when people are intimidated about it, they just kind of avoid it, ostrich in the sand kind of thing. What's that?
I've been that person.
That's what you did? Yeah.
Well, not with kids necessarily, but yeah, if something's like overwhelming, you just avoid it and think one day it'll go away, and it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly. Oh, it'll work itself out. Yeah, it'll work itself out one way or the other, right?
When your back's against the wall and it's time to work it out, right?
Yeah. So avoid all that stress, avoid all that, all that stuff, and just, do a little planning. Yeah. Get your house in order. But just kind of recap, number one, get that tax information updated. Yeah. Right. Get your credits where they're due. And then number two is update your health insurance with the newborn, the new edition, or whatever the case may be. Get a little life, policy for them, or, hey, let's get a little creative and actually get a bigger bang for your buck. $1 Million Baby Program, things like that. Ask us questions if you have questions on that. Great 529 alternative, by the way. Update that will with, a set of instructions, right? On, okay, if something happens, then what? And then lastly is get your financial house in order, because it's going to make things so much easier for you, both short term and long term. And you're not going to feel that financial stress that a lot of people go through, because they just kind of hope it all works out and they don't have a plan. So that's what we got today, guys. So, hopefully you found some information. Do us a favor. If you did get some good information, give us a thumbs up down there, right? We need some love. And do me another favor, share this, right? That's the whole point of this show. We're trying to teach you stuff. We want you to watch it, to learn it, to love it, and share it, and and share this out there and help us get our channel up and running and growing. It's been growing, which is great, but we could always use some more. And I think we're putting out some good content that anybody can use and make those money moves for you and your family, right? And it's quick. It's quick, right? So again, Wendy, thanks for being here today and everything that you're kind of sharing out there. And again, get a plan together and make some money moves for you and your family and make it happen. So everybody, thanks again and have a great week. We'll see you next week, 10 o'clock Central.